So I'm going to introduce, this is Jenn, Jess, and Katie. Jenn and Katie are both students at Mary Washington, and Jess is the Domain of One's Own coordinator at Mary Washington as well. And they're going to talk about their program, the Domains Fellows, and I'll let you go for it.
Okay. So what are the Domain Fellows program? The Domain Fellows program offers students a biannual stipend that pays for their tools, time, creativity in return for acting as ambassadors for Domain of One's Own at UMW, the University of Mary Washington.
So who are Domain Fellows? So the Domain Fellows is kind of a diverse group of freshmen, current students at Mary Wash, and DKC tutors. And they, like we said, they serve as ambassadors to the UMW student community for the Domain of One's Own program. And these Domain Fellows come in with a variety of backgrounds in digital work and website creation. And they really do share that passion together of website design and website creation. And they meet every 2 weeks to discuss topics around digital identity or creativity, or to get feedback on their projects that they work on throughout the year.
And now, what is the work of Domain Fellows? So each Domain Fellow has their own personal project that centers on a topic or interest of their choice. And so now, here are some examples of what that could entail. To start, last semester, I just completed the second iteration of Domain Fellows. And at UMW, I have two majors. I'm an English creative writing student, along with a communications and digital studies student. So I wanted to make a domain that combined both of those, and I could work my muscles in both of my strengths. And so what better way to do that than through digital storytelling? And so I began with small projects. I did little text stories. Notably, I made an ongoing Instagram account for my 3D printed robot, Winston Nanobit. And he was just a little let me work on telling stories and being creative through visual aspects, and he's adorable. I love him. And also, but overall, my favorite project to make, I actually made a podcast parody of the podcast Welcome to Night Vale. And I wrote, recorded, and edited my podcast, Welcome to Night University, to make my own rendition of the quirky podcast. And so that, I worked on the format of the original podcast. It's loading very slowly.
Yes.
And I was able to work on their format, but I was able to I write my own material and edit it all together, and I had honestly the most fun that I've probably had in years making anything. I was laying on my bed in my dorm room, like editing on Audacity, and my roommate was at her desk, and every now and then she would hear me go, "Oh, yes!" When the audio, when the music lines up with the vocals just right on accident, and it's the best feeling in the world. But that was all because of Domain Fellows. And Domain Fellows, it gave me the space to explore my interests and explore different mediums that I've been able to work with before, but I hadn't really actually gotten to do exactly what I wanted to do with them, so it was an amazing experience. And honestly, I created projects that I never would have had the platform to create if it weren't for Domain Fellows.
So the next project is by Chris Ringham. He is a recent grad. And he was a Domain Fellows this last year. He majored in computer science with a minor in digital studies, and he was also a tutor at the Digital Knowledge Center on campus. And his Domain Fellows project was a podcast that he wrote with his roommate and close friend, Andy. And it focused on his friends' journeys throughout college and the relationships that they formed. And it was called Well, That's College podcast. And they're very entertaining, and one of the challenges that he had was getting people to stay on task. There were a lot of tangents, so it was really interesting to see how he was able kind of to continually wrap them back into what the topic was for the podcast. The next one is Mandy. She was a freshman Domain Fellow this year. She actually has now been hired as a DKC tutor. She's majoring in business administration with a double minor in digital studies and data science. She's also an artist. She loves to draw and paint and take pictures. So for her Domain Fellows website, she decided to create an art portfolio to showcase all of her recent artwork. She describes her domain as clean and creative and full of personality. By being a Domain Fellow, she's had this opportunity to not only work on her website, but get more familiar with these digital tools and ultimately become a DKC tutor.
So the last website we have is Courtney's, and Courtney was a Domain Fellow in the 2017-2018 year, and she was a freshman. And Courtney is an avid reader. I have never met someone who reads as many books as she does. And so for hers, she decided that she wanted to make a book blog. and I thought that was really neat. And she was able to do like reading discussions and chapter summaries, and even talk about like the latest technology and the reading and writing world. And she had this space, this website, to kind of make her digital identity about something that she cares about, which is books, and to kind of create a discourse on that space that's her own. And she even describes it as like the little corner of the internet that she can make it into whatever she wants. So let's see if I can switch back. That's the trick of the day. So how do Domain Fellows advocate to their classmates? So we have a couple of events that we do at Mary Washington that help us kind of get the word out and that the Domain Fellows help run. One of our big ones is Domain Days, and we do those about every few months, and everyone will work together to kind of pitch in and make that event. And basically what we do is we'll gather at a popular spot on campus. So this is the top photo is us at the Hurley Convergence Center on campus. And we'll set up a table and we'll hand out swag and we'll hand out cookies and we'll have our Domainosaur there. And we'll just catch students going to class or hanging out or studying, and we ask them if they have a domain, and if they don't have a domain, we ask them if they want to sign up and get one, or if they do get a domain, they get a Domainosaur with their own Domainosaur tag that has their website on it. So just by like giving out this merch, we're kind of like, merch really, it's just, we're kind of making sure that people are kind of more aware of the program. We also have our social media accounts, so the Domainosaur, he has an Instagram if you want to follow it. And the Domain Fellows actually take turns running the social media accounts, which I think is really kind of helpful because then they feel like they're actually able to shape the program and have like their voice heard on it. And so they'll take turns going on it. And so Domainosaur has been all over the world. He's gone to study abroad. He's gone to vacations. He's hung out at Mary Wash, obviously. So the Domainosaur social media account is pretty neat. And the last one that we've kind of done advertising through and kind of gotten more word out about us is through traditional media, like the Spirit Rock on campus. So we just have a rock that anyone can paint, and so we will paint it before a domain day, and that helps us get like a lot of foot traffic for our event, and also just people think it's cute too, because who doesn't love like a dinosaur with a computer?
I think the costume.
And we also have a ginormous inflatable Domainosaur costume that sometimes a Domain Fellow will wear, or one of us, and we'll just kind of go around and greet people and make sure to hand out lovely treats as well.
So now, what advice would we give to people who would like to start similar programs? First off, we'd say gather examples of good student domain of one's own websites and ask students if they would like to be fellows. Reach out to other students doing similar work via social media or through any references. For instance, if there are professors who are teaching classes with digital components, they probably know some really good candidates. Now, the students, they can be familiar with domain of one's own, or they don't have to be. They could just have an interest. We usually get a good mix of the two, and it always makes really interesting dynamic of projects. Also, be open to students' suggestion ideas. Allow them to explore their own interests. Let them be experimental, or let them follow a pattern. Like if it's just a book blog, they can do that as well. That freedom honestly means everything to the students. And allowing them to give them your ideas lets them shape the program itself. So let them tell you how it is and to tailor it to fit their needs and how the program can best fit the needs on campus as well. And lastly, make sure to showcase the Domain Fellows projects on a front-facing website that can demonstrate to their classmates, future fellows, or people like yourselves who are interested in starting similar programs at your institution, what students can do and what amazing work they can create on their domains.
So what have we found with the Domain Fellows project? Well, we found that it has obviously helped integrate domain of one's own on the UMW campus, but in a more intrinsic way. Domain of one's own typically started off in the classrooms and kind of just signing up, get a domain for your history class or something like that. But now we're kind of seeing this coming from the students, and they're not necessarily using it for their courses. They're using it for their own projects, as we saw with the storytelling and the podcasts and the art portfolio. So it gives students this place online to have fun and learn new skills. It allows them to get more familiar and comfortable with domain of one's own, and it allows them to share what they've created with their peers. It also demystifies the use of digital tools in website creation. It shows their friends and peers that this isn't really that scary. Anyone can do it. And then lastly, of course, the one bullet point on this page. At UMW, we've really enjoyed the Domain Fellows program, and we really would encourage you to start something similar at your institution and allow students to explore website creation based on their own interests. That is the Domain Fellows.
All right, any questions? Or
Yes.
Do you think that there would, sorry, do you want to go in the front of the room first?
No, it's okay.
Do you think that there would be any interest, and if so, how might you imagine connecting up Domains Fellows with similar groups of students on other campuses, like digital learning assistants at Muhlenberg, students on other campuses who are maybe also, have the space to create outside of their classes with the support of your institutions? Do you think you could get interest among those students on those different campuses, and what would it look like?
I think so. What you're describing kind of reminds me of this thing called CoPlac with digital history that I helped out with, because it was basically courses that were taught with different universities and was all like online together. And so I think if there was like this cool creative project and people could just like zoom in every now and again for meetings, that'd be really awesome. Because people know different things, and you could make this really cool like one big project or have a few that are cross-institutional, and then they could come together at conferences like this and then present them, really showing what students can do from all over the country.
And putting the power in the students' hand too, of course, letting them, be the makers of that project.
Thank you so much for presenting. The examples are really fun, like the WTC podcast. Welcome to Night Vale Parody. I forget the title of it.
Night University.
So I walked in a couple minutes late, so I'm sorry if this was already talked about, but I'm wondering if you can explain almost like the more administrative side of the Domain Fellows. So what is the application process like? Do you get a stipend? Because that is sort of a lot of labor, so I'm hoping there is some form of compensation or credits or...
Yes. Yeah, so what we do it over a year, so 2 semesters, because 1 semester isn't enough time to do a project, because people are doing it on their own time. But they do get a stipend, so the students get a stipend each semester.
Do you mind if I ask how much?
$250 a semester.
Yeah, it's 500 total, 250 payments, 1 per semester.
Yeah, and we typically have 6 or so Domain Fellows, 5 to 6. And so whatever your budget can handle, of course. And we meet every 2 weeks. So we meet every 2 weeks, and they do have to apply because, there is a lot of interest, but, the more people you get, the kind of more chaotic it can get. People will start like dropping, we want those people to really be interested in it, and so we look at the applications very thoroughly. And
is this managed by
So it was originally managed by Martha Burtis, the former director of the Digital Knowledge Center. I stepped in to help out this year, and so I'm going to keep it moving forward in the future.
Okay, and do you mind sharing what your role is?
Yes, sorry. I'm the Domain of One's Own program manager at UMW.
Okay, Thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you're using Udacity to learn some of the skills that you needed to build up your website. I was wondering what other type of tools do you offer to the students to assist them with building websites?
You want to talk about that?
Tools to offer the students for making websites?
Mm-hmm.
All the students. So I was already a tutor when I went into the Domain Fellows program. So I was kind of there to also help the other members of Domain Fellows. So I am used to teaching in, we just teach WordPress with, of course, like plugins and things like that, and also like coding and HTML, of course.
Also, like with the DKC, anyone, if the Domain Fellow was like, I want to learn Omeka or I wanted to do Grav or something, we would be able to help them do that. Like, really what we're trying to say is that these projects can cover any field and can incorporate any media, as we've seen with Katie and with Chris. So like being able to be flexible with that, kind of Domain Fellows and the Digital Knowledge Center go hand in hand, because we do have DKC tutors in it, but if any of the Domain Fellows didn't know something, someone would jump in.
Yeah.
That's the kind of community we have, is that we all kind of know something. So like together we're able to kind of help each other figure it out and kind of work on bigger projects like that we want to.
Yeah, we definitely stay honest also, like
Yeah.
in telling what we know, and if we don't know something, we'll just tell them that we'll sit with them and work through and try to figure out what the best way of going about whatever project that they want, how to best execute that.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
So, it sounds like it's actually quite a cheap program to run, and and I think it sounds great just on its merits. But if I were trying to convince my administrators on my campus, they would want to know, like, can you show consequences? So if you tried to study, try to do some study of impact. I don't know, people that the fellows have worked with, whether they have more frequently they are become active domains users, or some sort of follow-on kind of
Yeah.
study.
So during domain days, we do keep track of how many signups we get. It's really interesting because last year, the signups were a lot higher than people that already have domains, and this time, a lot of people visiting the table already had domains. So at one point we had like 12 signups. Mind you, we're a small school, so that was kind of a lot.
That was
we were
a
like,
big deal.
that's awesome. Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
But then alternatively, we had like 14 students come by for a Domainosaur, and they already had their domain. So that was really cool. And we're still working out how to get people to come to domain days.
But I do have to say, we are more integrated in the campus than when I first came there. People are more familiar with the Domain of One's Own program. When I first worked at the DKC and was talking about it with people, they had no idea what I was talking about. Now most people are interacting it within their classroom, and now Domain Fellows is kind of saying, hey, it doesn't have to be just for classes. It's yours. It is your space. So take control of it and do what you want to do with it, essentially.
And also, a lot of times when we have academic classes that use domain of one's own, sometimes as a tutor, I've seen a lot of students come in and they're kind of begrudgingly working with the program. But once they learn that they can have a lot of creativity and add their own personal style to it, as, whether through Domain Fellows or not, it makes their whole learning experience a lot smoother and more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah, the impact is very qualitative, not quantitative.
Right.
We don't have learning outcomes for this.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Any other last minute questions? We'll probably have time for one more, and then it's lunchtime. So.
You throw that into lunchtime
I know.
comment.
So, yeah.
We're like, let's go.
We're like, yeah, we're good. Yeah, that's enough of that.
Cool. All right, anything